Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Harry, and today we are looking into the incredible, almost unbelievable life of a man who was absolutely central to early Arctic exploration. Kimmy, are you ready to talk about a true survivalist?
Absolutely, Harry. I'm Kimmy, and today's subject is Tatannuaq, also known by his English name, Augustus. He lived in the early 19th century and was an Inuk interpreter, diplomat, and guide. Honestly, his life sounds like an epic adventure movie, complete with high-stakes negotiations, survival against all odds, and some massive family drama.
It really does. Let's start with his name, Tatannuaq. In Inuktitut, it translates loosely to the belly or it is full. He was born in the 1790s, about 200 miles north of Churchill, in what is now Nunavut. His band lived a traditional semi-nomadic life, hunting caribou, musk oxen, and seals.
Right, but in 1812, he took a job at the Hudson's Bay Company post in Churchill. This is where he picked up English and Cree, adding to his native Inuktitut. The European explorers who met him described him as a brilliant writer who actually wrote as a hobby. And physically, George Back, a midshipman, described him as only 5 feet 1 inch tall, but extremely strong and well-made, a pocket-sized powerhouse.
A powerhouse indeed. And those skills made him the perfect candidate for British Arctic expeditions. In 1820, he was hired by Sir John Franklin for the infamous Coppermine expedition. The British were obsessed with finding the Northwest Passage, and Franklin needed local guides. Tatannuaq and another Inuk interpreter named Huotorak joined them.
And Tatannuaq wasn't just translating words, he was translating the entire landscape. When shown European maps of regions he had never physically visited, he recognized the geographical features and filled in the blanks. He even built an igloo with Huotorak in 1821 and explained the construction to Franklin, who meticulously wrote it down in his diaries.
He also had a bit of an ego, which I honestly love. George Back noted that Tatannuaq acted with a sense of superiority over Huotorak and insisted that the British officers treat him with the same deference they would show to a high-ranking officer. He spent his downtime writing and smoking. He knew his worth.
He definitely did, and he proved it at the Coppermine River. They reached Bloody Falls, the site of a historic massacre of Inuit by Dene people. When local Inuit fled at the sight of the British, Tatannuaq went ahead to make contact. He met an elderly Inuk man named Tereganawak, or White Fox, who actually tried to fight him. Tatannuaq calmed him down, gave him gifts, and opened lines of communication.
White Fox was so impressed that he actually offered one of his daughters to Tatannuaq as a wife. But Tatannuaq, already married with 3 sons, politely declined. Sadly, the return journey of that expedition was a nightmare. Huotorak went missing while hunting, and Tatannuaq spent a day and a half searching for him to no avail. The remaining party faced horrific starvation. They were reduced to eating leather, maggots, and rock tripe.
That is incredibly grim. Tatannuaq actually went ahead with Franklin and a voyager named Benoit to seek help. When Franklin had to turn back due to a broken snowshoe, Tatannuaq and Benoit pushed on to a Yellowknives camp. They successfully secured a relief party, saving Franklin and the other survivors. Out of 20 men who started the expedition, only 9 survived, including Tatannuaq.
But the tragedy didn't end when he got home to Churchill. He found out his wife had been remarried to Huotorak's brother. When the brother heard Tatannuaq had survived, he actually took his own life out of fear of Tatannuaq's revenge. Because of this, Huotorak's band blamed Tatannuaq and ostracized him. He had to fish every day to survive, which he really struggled with. During this low point, he met an Anglican missionary named John West, served as his interpreter, and converted to Christianity.
Despite all that drama, when Franklin planned his second expedition in 1825, he called Tatannuaq back. Tatannuaq even brought along an apprentice interpreter named Uligbuk. On this Mackenzie River expedition, Tatannuaq proved his diplomatic genius again. At one point, their boats were grounded at the mouth of the Mackenzie River, and several hundred local Inuit began pillaging them. Tatannuaq bravely stood up to them, pleading with them and warning them they would be shot if they didn't leave.
Later, some accounts suggest that after the raid had ended, he went ashore completely unarmed to confront a group of 40 Inuit to warn them against future attacks. He scolded them for the raid and boldly told them that if they had killed any of the Europeans, he would have shot them himself. Talk about bravery. He then successfully convinced them to trade peaceably. He was so loyal that when the expedition disbanded in 1827, he reportedly wept.
He was deeply bonded with these explorers. In 1833, while working at Fort Chimo, he heard that George Back was mounting a search party for John Ross's lost expedition. Even though he had an injured leg, it is said that Tatannuaq walked an astonishing 1,900 kilometers through the brutal winter weather to Fort Resolution just to join the search, with records indicating he actually started this foot journey from Fort Churchill rather than Fort Chimo.
1,900 kilometers on foot with a bad leg in winter. That is superhuman. But tragically, this would be his final journey. He set out from Fort Resolution with a Canadian voyageur and an Iroquois scout to find Back's party. They got lost, and his two companions abandoned him to return to the fort. Tatannuaq was left alone in a massive storm. His body was found near the Jean River, just 32 kilometers from safety. It was early 1834.
It is so heartbreaking that he died so close to help, especially since John Ross had already returned safely to England. After his death, George Back and George Simpson wrote of him with immense fondness, praising his character. Though Nicola Finlayson, his supervisor at Fort Chimo, was less kind, calling him a bad hunter and a drunken sot. But history has favored Tatannuaq.
Indeed it has. He has a lake named after him, Augustus Lake. And my favorite tribute, a species of butterfly, the brown elfin, or Calliphris augustinus, was named in his honor. A delicate, beautiful legacy for an incredibly tough man.
That is a beautiful way to remember him. Thank you all for listening to this incredible story of resilience and courage. We hope you enjoyed learning about Tatannuaq as much as we did. Stay curious, everyone, and goodbye.
This episode is based on the Wikipedia article Tatannuaq, which is available under the Creative Commons Attribution Share-alike license. This podcast was crafted using artificial intelligence.